Committee on Health and Social Development, and our next briefing will be from the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income. And I will turn the floor over to you to introduce yourself and explain who you are, and we can carry on from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jane Ladwell. I work with the Advisory Council on the Status of Women, and I'm a member of the PEI Working Group for Livable Income. We're privileged to have the opportunity to speak to you today, to briefly introduce and answer your questions, most importantly, about a national initiative by the Coalition Canada Basic Income Guarantee Revenu de Base, a proposal for a guaranteed basic income benefit in Prince Edward Island. And we have Marie Burge, who is a co-founder of Cooper Institute, a member of the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income, part of Coalition Canada, and a member of the proposal committee that developed this proposal. We're very lucky online to have Monsieur Benoit Robidoux, who is an economist and one of the authors of the proposal for a guaranteed basic income benefit. Gillian Kilfoyle, who is the Executive Director of Women's Network Prince Edward Island and a member of the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income. And I'll note, Jill and I were not part of creating the proposal that we are talking about today, but we can help give you perspective on why we as PEI advocates think it's a good idea and why we hope you will share that point of view. So I'm going to ask Marie to begin. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to give a history lesson, and there's a test afterwards. So I want to give the PEI background for the proposal. The proposal for the PEI, a basic income demonstration program, originated in PEI. I want us to remember that, at both the community level and that is in the form of the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income, and also in the political arena. And that was the 4 political parties, beginning in 2019 and following. So at the community level, the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income is a coalition of 10 to 12 community groups and individuals established in 2003. The working group based our grassroots organization on the need for livable income for all. That's why we have the name, PEI Working Group for Livable Income. From the beginning, we have seen livable income that is covering all basic needs as a collective human right. This is the beginning and the meaning of basic income guarantee. At the political level on PEI, after 2 earlier unanimous votes in favor of various aspects of basic income guarantee, the PEI Legislative Assembly in 2020 unanimously accepted the report of the Special Committee on Poverty in PEI. A major recommendation of that committee, if you remember, was that PEI proceed in union with the federal government to create a province-wide basic income program which would be fully funded by federal and provincial funds and would be universally accessible to every islander who needs it to reach the designated poverty line. Okay, so now we come to the formation of Coalition Canada. Coalition Canada Basic Income Revenu de Base was formed in November 2019. The coalition grew out of a 2019 resolution passed in the Kingston area group for basic income guarantee to support PEI as an ideal launching place for basic income for Canada. Since its beginning in 2019, Coalition Canada has made basic income a pan-Canadian project and has kept the establishment of basic income in PEI as its main goal over the past 5 years. So the coalition has representatives, it's pan-Canadian, has had representatives from all the provinces of Canada and also the 3 territories. Currently, Trish Altas and I are representatives of the PEI Working Group for Livable Income, and therefore representing PEI on that. So, next stage. There was the formation of the Proposal Committee in July 2021. Coalition Canada formed a committee of economists, politicians, advocates, and federal and provincial civil servants to come up with a proposal to promote federal, provincial officials getting together and beginning conversations toward establishing in PEI a basic income demonstration program of 5 to 7 years duration. The Proposal Committee was made up of 24 volunteers. There were 8 well-established economists from across the country, coming from many different perspectives. As well, we had 5 politicians, 3 ex-MPs, they were, a Liberal, a Conservative, and an NDP. We had 2 sitting MLA members, one from the Progressive Conservatives and the other from the Green Party. We had 6 community advocates and 3 federal and provincial civil servants. The committee functioned under the direction of Barbara Borax and Tony Pickard, both from Ontario. They were members of the Coalition and are members of Coalition Canada. Our guest today, Benoit, from Ottawa. He has had a key role in this proposal. He is a civil servant who played a very, very important role in the development of the proposal itself. And he worked with the economists during the whole process, and he himself is an economist, of course. He was one of the authors of the proposal report. One of his colleagues wrote, "The role of Benoit," and also they mentioned Patrick Davis, Brad Binns, "was major. In fact, we could never have produced such a concrete and sensibly detailed report without their input." So, finally, what is the result of the committee's work? The committee produced a proposal, and this is the name of it, a proposal for a guaranteed basic income benefit for Prince Edward Island. I think you've all received a copy of that. It was released to the Canadian public in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, on November the 22nd, 2023. The main purpose of the proposal from the beginning, as we're developing it, and right now, the main purpose is to provide evidence-based assurance that a basic income demonstration program in Prince Edward Island is both affordable and politically feasible. It is meant to open up the conversation between the provincial government and the federal government based on the proposal and look for the possibility of implementing the demonstration program in Prince Edward Island. So that's my little spiel.
Great. So in addition to the feasibility, the Working Group for a Livable Income wanted to make sure that I spoke a little bit about the values behind the proposal, because it's no good to have a proposal that's feasible without it being founded in values. So since the formation of the Working Group for a Livable Income, our work has been founded in principles of human rights, primarily, especially the very basic human right for everyone to meet their basic needs for things like food and shelter, for warmth and security, and other basic needs. And that's by right of their belonging to our community, belonging to the human community. As Marie outlined, the community we have been focused on as a working group is the community of Prince Edward Island, known by the Mi'kmaq people as Epiquet, part of the region of Epiquet and Pictou in the territory of Mi'kma'ki. And our first principle that I should state of basic income guarantee in this territory is that Indigenous autonomy and self-determination must be predominant, and it's the right of Indigenous people to determine whether a basic income is delivered in their communities, and if so, what form it will take and how it will be implemented. And the proposal for guaranteed livable income benefit that we offer today is a model for cooperation between provincial and federal jurisdiction, and we're conscious that that is a proposal among settlers and settler-elected representatives.
Can we just take a break for a second? Is that, does anybody else hear a squeaking?
I was hearing it.
Yeah. Okay. Do we
Maybe
want to
shut
break
that
for
off?
just a second to see if we can check that out?
It's a feedback.
Is it feedback from,
From this.
okay.
I think it's the Zoom. But
Can
I
we
can
fix
go
that?
check with them.
Okay. I'll just break for a second. Just if we do that, it shuts the camera off. We'll just check to figure out whether it's the Zoom or whether it's, well, that's not a very pleasant sound.
Ask Ben to mute his mic when he's not talking.
Okay. Benoit, can you hear me?
Yes, I've just put myself on mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Should I?
Okay. All right. It should be okay.
Okay.
Okay. Great, no worries. So just to continue, we're advocating for basic income with respect for treaties of peace and friendship with the Mi'kmaq people. We affirm those treaties and acknowledge that we have more to do to act justly with peace and friendship, to enact reconciliation in this territory and respond to calls for justice for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited people. So values are important. One of the strengths of the proposal we're here to introduce from Coalition Canada, one of the reasons that community advocates from the Working Group for a Livable Income have embraced it and promote it, is that it is grounded in principles. When the working group presented to the Special Committee on Poverty in Prince Edward Island, our focus was principles for a guaranteed basic income, and many of those shared values were confirmed as the values in the Special Committee report, and they were expressed in their proposed model for a basic income program, and those same core principles are retained and expressed in the Coalition Canada proposal. So some of the most important principles include that a basic income be universal and unconditional to all adult residents, subject to income, regardless of work status or relationship status. The principle that recognizes that not all people have the same basic needs and some will need more support. We want a program that transforms some social programs and services, such as income support, while maintaining others, such as disability support, that it be administered through the tax system, that it be sufficient to provide for people's basic needs. And as we have said, that it be grounded in basic human rights, that the model be not charitable, but provided with dignity and respect for the human rights of all recipients. And so we believe that, that these principles can be encoded in a successful program, and that the proposal that we're introducing offers evidence-based and well-considered solutions to questions that have been offered as barriers to these principles and barriers to models of basic income guarantee. And that we believe that the work done nationally builds on the will expressed by the people of PEI and subsequent holders of the seats in this room, which has also been an inspiration to the proposal. And now I'm going to ask Benoit to provide a brief introduction from his point of view.
Thank you, Jane. So I was going to introduce myself, but I think Jane and Mary did a good job at that. But I would just mention, to be really clear and avoid confusion, that I'm a former civil servant. I worked for 30 years at Finance Canada, coordinating and developing multiple budgets, and I did work also as associate and senior associate deputy minister at Employment and Social Development Canada from 2015 to 2020. So let me begin with a brief overview of the proposal. Usually it takes me about 30 minutes to do that. I will make it very short and like 2-3 minutes to give you the key elements of the proposal. So the report recommends a guaranteed basic income or GBI benefit for PEI residents aged 18 to 64. The benefit would be jointly delivered and financed by the government of PEI and the government of Canada. The benefit would have a maximum annual benefit of 85% of the official poverty line, which is about $19,000 for single adults and $27,000 for a family of 2 adults. And there will be a reduction rate of the benefit coming with higher income. So for every dollar increase in family net income, the benefit would be reduced by 50 cents. The new benefit would interact with existing income-tested benefit and tax credit, but not replace them, including income assistance program that would remain in place. It would be delivered through the tax system the same way as the federal child and senior benefits are. Just to be clear, we're not referring to a universal basic income or UBI, which is a uniform and unconditional payments to all citizens, regardless of their income. The GBI we propose is an income-tested benefit provided to families with low and modest income. In other words, we are not proposing a revolution. Instead, we propose a natural evolution of Canada's social safety net. In building this proposal, we try as much as possible to address concerns that are often voiced when basic income proposals are discussed. 2 of these concerns are worth mentioning here this morning. First, basic income proposals are criticized for being too expensive and therefore hardly implementable without significantly increasing the tax burden on most citizens. Second, there's also concern that such benefit would provide less incentives to work. We believe our proposal helps to address these concerns by proposing the use of a broader family structure to administer the benefit, a key distinction from other basic income proposals to date. In a nutshell, we ensure that children aged 18 and over living with their parents are included in the same family instead of separate families for the administration of the benefit. In technical terms, we use census family instead of nuclear family. This broader family structures allows us to reduce the cost of the program by 40% and the already small impact on labor markets found in other studies by 30%. This makes our proposal different from other proposals. For a net cost of $100 million per year, this is about 1% of PEI GDP, or less than 4% of its revenues. Poverty in PEI would be virtually eliminated for working-age adults and their children. This in turn means that it would be possible for PEI to finance 50% of the demonstration projects with minor adjustments to its taxes or expenditures. So on this, I will pass it back to Jane to close the remarks.
Bidou, and I'd like to also call on Jill now, who will actually provide our closing remarks, bring us up to date on developments since the proposal was presented.
Thank you, Jane. We strongly support the province of PEI's efforts to work with federal government to implement a demonstration project on basic income guarantee as efficiently as possible, and we desire for it to move forward the work that has already been done. As a reminder, in November 2023, Honorable Barb Ramsey, PEI Minister of Social Development and Seniors, initiated communication with Honorable Jenna Sudds, Federal Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development. MLA Cindy McEwen introduced Motion 80 advocating for guaranteed basic income, GBI, to the PEI Legislative Assembly. In March 2024, Minister Ramsey presented a response from Minister Suds during the legislature's spring sitting. The federal government expressed interest in collaborating on PEI's Basic Income Demonstration Program. Minister Suds indicated willingness to establish a working group to share federal, administrative, survey, and tax data. In May 2024, in a meeting with the PEI Working Group for Livable Income, Minister Ramsey confirmed federal collaboration on the GBI project and the formation of a joint working group. Minister Ramsey mentioned productive face-to-face discussions with Minister Suds and plans for PEI representatives to meet federal counterparts to explore working group creation. These are important steps and developments. You may ask, why a demonstration project? To conclude, we are not proposing a pilot, but a province-wide demonstration project. Implementing a demonstration project in PEI in partnership with the federal government would allow us to assess its full interaction with existing provincial and federal benefits. It would also sidestep many technical issues involved in setting an appropriate pilot project. This would be a unique learning experience for PEI and the entire country and put Canada at the forefront of social policy of the 21st century. In closing, our report proposes a GBI benefit that is feasible and affordable and socially acceptable. We strongly recommend that the PEI government continue to prioritize the creation of a PEI Guaranteed Basic Income demonstration project in collaboration with the federal government.
And that concludes our introduction, and we'd be delighted to answer questions.
Thank you so much. First on the list I have Robin.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you all for coming in here today. And this is a really important topic and a big one, especially following on the heels of our last presenters and what it's going to take to move forward in a lot of different areas. And Benoit had, I guess, answered my first question, was does it replace our current social services program? And how does it work in unison with our social services program?
Benoit, would you be happy to answer in a little more detail than your 2-minute overview?
Sure. Thanks, Jane. That's a good question. Again, the report is somewhat details about that. I will interact with benefit like EI and CPP, for example, at the federal level. And so that's it covered there. And it basically would not affect those things, those two major federal benefit. But if you receive income from these two sources, better pension with CPP or EI, in the year before, you would see your GBI reduced because it's part of your income. So there would be an interaction there. That is a normal interaction you see between program. When you have more income, you could get less benefit of something else. And this will be even more true for income tested benefit. Like for the best example would be Canada Child Benefit, where if you get a bit more income, you would get a bit less of that benefit. You still get more in total of the two benefits, but you get a bit less. There's a low clawback on the CCB. So you would get more income potentially with this benefit, so you get less of the other one, but in total you get more. When it comes to social assistance, accessibility program you have in PI, those programs would remain in place, and the main reason and the interaction would be fully integrated in the sense that the new GBI we propose, as I mentioned, would be administered the same way than the CCB or the OS and GIS. And so it would it would be adjusted every summer in July based on the income you had in the last calendar year. In that context, it would not be a program that would be useful to address people who see their income fall unexpectedly in a year and who has no access to employment insurance, who are run out of employment insurance, who need to have access to emergency support like social assistance. So social assistance would remain for these people. The first resort, the first program taking care of people that would see their situation change dramatically would still be social assistance. But over time, in fact, in the next year, these people will be rolling into the GBI. So this is how the two programs would interact. And again, we recommend for provincial benefits, income tested benefit, which is a long list in PEI of relatively small programs. Interaction would happen normally because most of your programs are based on net income, and GBI would be part of net income. But again, we encourage the government to, when they implement, to look at this program and see if they want to change their eligibility, the threshold, things like that, to have a better kind of impact on poverty and on the situation of people. And we are also very clear in the report about, with respect to person with disability, to maintain in-kind support that are provided through accessibility program, for example, to people with disability, that this is a different situation than income. And then this program would be really income, and in-kind benefits should remain for these people. So we kind of discussed a bit the interaction there between these programs, and I hope this is not too long, and at the same time gives you a good idea how this would work.
Thank you, Benoit, and it's a complicated and somewhat confusing system, so I do have to, I'm going to have to dig a little deeper into it. It sounds like the guaranteed basic income should essentially lessen the need for our social assistance programs. My biggest concern with people that I speak with is those that rely very heavily on the social assistance program here on Prince Edward Island. They generally, they're doing okay. It's the single mom that has a couple of children that I hear the most from, that are struggling the worst. And I think that a guaranteed basic income would certainly benefit them. And when I say the social assistance program, them being okay, I mean, I'm not saying that they're not living in poverty, but I don't hear as much from that demographic. It's the single mom that is working a job or two jobs and still really struggling. So I think the guaranteed basic income would certainly benefit that demographic maybe the most. One question, I guess, the impact on the labor market. If this has been piloted in other areas, I look at that 18 to 25 demographic, is there going to be a significant impact on potentially labor market for Prince Edward Island if a guaranteed basic income is implemented? What are your thoughts on that?
I'll give just a general response, which is that in every place where a basic income benefit has been piloted, it has been shown that the labor market and workforce impacts are not high. So, for example, in the 1970s, the MINCOM project in Manitoba was the most robust test of basic income in Canada, and the data from that showed that people continued to work, and it also showed that the groups that did not work as much, that reduced their hours in the workforce, were primarily people who stayed in school for additional education and training, and new parents or people with caregiving, unpaid caregiving responsibilities, new parents spending more time at home in caregiving responsibilities. And so those were the workforce effects, but in general, what has been found anywhere that basic income and similar programs have been tried is that people want to work. There are actually tremendous disincentives to work when you're on social assistance because you very quickly become ineligible for social assistance, whereas with a basic income guarantee, you're guaranteed an income floor under which you cannot fall, but you can do better than the basics through paid income. If you are able and if you choose, you can boost yourself and create advantage for your family with many fewer barriers. And most people want to. Also, we have to acknowledge unpaid work. Jill, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I think, looking at guaranteed basic income, it's easy to think, oh, well, you're going to receive money to stay home and do nothing, And so I think your question is an important one because we do really want to address that myth, People are very motivated to be able to earn beyond their basic needs. And so that mythology around impacts on the labor force really aren't borne out in the research or the pilots that have been done previously. Where you do see some changes in the labor market is often with what are considered tertiary workers. That would be the high school student of the single mom who's working, say, a fast food job to help pay bills. And I would argue that that child's job should be to be in school and involved in extracurricular. And so that loss from the labor market isn't really an overall negative one from my point of view. And so what we see is that low wages, where people spend 40 hours plus a week outside of the home, those are a bigger disincentive to work than a guaranteed basic income. And what a guaranteed basic income allows us to do is to have that floor in place. And so like Jane said, people can go back to school to upgrade their education, to transform what their career choices are. Businesses, entrepreneurs, imagine anyone who's entrepreneurial minded, if you could have a guaranteed income. They say that most businesses, you don't draw a salary for the first 2 years at least, And so guaranteed basic income would allow people to take on that risk of opening new small businesses to respond to our local needs. And we know that a lot of people already are doing work that is not part of the formal workforce. And so guaranteed basic income would help to address that unpaid labor that is often done by people who identify as women. And so I think it's an important question, but I really think it's a lingering myth that isn't really evidenced in the research and the experience that has happened in other places. It allows people to work through the labor force differently, but in general, we're very motivated and we attach a lot of our identity and our sense of value to our workplaces and to what we produce in the labor force. You meet somebody new, one of the first questions they often ask you is, so what do you do? And so people are really motivated to be able to have higher earnings, to have a career or a job that represents them and that represents the value that they place on themselves. And guaranteed basic income allows people to do that in a more supportive way than existing programs. But that idea that people are going to have their basic needs met and not want to engage with the workforce really isn't something that I think we need to be worried about in terms of a guaranteed basic income in PEI.
And Benoit, in the proposal, we have actual research that talks about the effect on the labor market. Can you comment on that, Benoit?
Sure, I think you guys did a good job. But I could add, in the report mentioned that there's two kind of credible group that have looked at the how labor market may react to and how these concerns are exist or the size of them. And so the PBO parliamentary budget officer look at that for a basic income of the size about we're proposing here. And the BC basic income panel, David Green and colleagues have looked at that too. And so they come with pretty low, like to use the words of the PBO himself, it says it's small. And what you come to is a reduction in PEI. When you simulate for PEI, you believe the hours worked by islanders would be reduced annually by 1.4%. It's pretty low. And David Green and company for the BC basic income panel came to a range of 0.6% to 1.7%. And they conclude that the 0.6, the lower bound, is probably the most credible estimate because most of the estimates are at that lower bound. So very low impact. Basically a few hours per year per islanders working now. So I don't think you should expect, partly at the low income level, no impact, but probably pretty low impact. But again, this is also why we propose a demonstration project of 5 to 7 years is in fact to see these impact and see what happened. And again, those are the immediate short-term impact. You should think also about what will be the impact like in the long term, the next generation, for example, how these things will evolve. And again, there's enough positive benefit for children from a GBI and also for people to get more training and get into better jobs that you could think that over time, whatever is the impact in the short term, it will be reduced and should over time become in fact a positive impact on labor market because of better education and better training. The case, for example, for children from US studies, from review of studies by Harvard economists is pretty convincing that any investment you make in children in terms of their health and income, and again, income would affect their health, is going to be very, very positive over time in terms of their wage and labor market participation. And in fact, it's so large that it pays for itself over time if you are enough patient to wait for the return. So I think labor concern is a real concern, but again, it's tend to be a bit over estimated in the mind of most people.
Thank you, Robin. Your last question, and then we'll go to Carla.
Well, thank you so much. That's great and very fulsome answers. And I hope that you don't feel that you have to defend with my questions because I'm very interested in this. And again, I'm going to go back to the social assistance folks versus the single mom with 2 children that can't make ends meet. And I hear from that demographic the most. The ones that are established in the system, they're stable enough that they're getting by without having to call me. It's that other single mom. And my next question was going to be and I really like the disincentive comment that you made because it really there is no incentive, right? You make it gets taken. So my question was going to be, would enhancing our existing programs provide a similar outcome to what a guaranteed basic income would provide? Then I have to challenge myself that our programs are not working the way they should, and they're not. So maybe an overhaul with something like this is the way to go. My question, I guess, is would enhancing existing programs have a similar effect, given the hefty price tag that this proposal would bring? What would the outcomes be?
Well,
potentially, I guess.
First of all, just to say that incrementalism is what you're talking about. Like you just keep adding onto poverty. You add a little bit more. And I think our experience, we have a lot of experience in that. And the experience is that never covers the basic needs of the people. And it's never done it. It hasn't done it anywhere. And this has been tried. When people say, well, where has basic income guarantee been tried? And we try to name the places. But social assistance has been tried. It has been tested. And incrementalism is adding a little onto poverty does not get you out of poverty. And so it hasn't worked. And there's no, I don't understand, and we hear this often, eh? Maybe we could just add a little bit more to our programs. And that's been done. It's been tried. And it has not gotten people out of poverty. And we're saying we want people at least to be brought up to the poverty line automatically because they're alive.
Yeah.
It's a human right. It's not something that, and that's the other part of it that's really important, and that is that your qualification for it is not decided by a worker. Your qualification is decided by, are you alive? Do you live here? Do you live in Prince Edward Island? And, are you alive? Of course. That's the qualification. So, that makes quite a difference, whether you're talking about a single parent family or, it makes quite a difference when what you're getting is your right. It's not something that you're looked at, you're assessed, and yeah, you're found worthy. This way, with this kind of a program, you are worthy always, and nobody judges that.
And I'll just add to that to amplify what Marie has said so beautifully. A social service system that does not provide help to the struggling single mom that you're describing is not a system that's working, first of all. And
Can I have a quick clarification? Yeah. So,
Robin.
sorry. This mom that I'm speaking of is a working mom that is working and not able to receive the benefits because of
eligibility.
yeah.
Yeah. So that is a system that's not working.
Yes.
And so, and the sad fact is that those who are eligible remain under the surveillance and supervision of the social assistance system. Some of them are not safe to talk to you because you are their only, like you as government, embodying government, are their only source of income. And they are not democratically at liberty to speak about their experience safely to the source of their income. That is an unfortunate fact of the system as well.
And I would just add, thank you for your question, and I hope you don't feel like we get very passionate and it can seem like we're defensive, but that's really not our intention.
This is good.
Working through these things are so important, and I think that's why, I've been on the working group for Livable Income for 8 years, and I still learn new things like this morning in Benoit's presentation and things. It is complex and it's also complicated. But I think what happens now is you're on income support or you're in the workforce and there's no way to migrate between the two without punishment. And so for somebody who's on income support but would like to work part-time or could work part-time but maybe not full-time, then their income support benefits are clawed back, and then their housing subsidy is at risk and all of these. So people end up having to choose one or the other, whereas guaranteed basic income would allow more of a mechanism for people to transition between income support and the workforce with less punishment, and it would also provide a top-up for that working mother. And so instead of having people to have to pick a lane where neither have their full needs met, you're able to kind of migrate between both of those systems in a safer way. And, you know, we hear from both. You know, at Women's Network, we have a Women in Trades program, and we try to get people oriented into those higher paying trades. Because if you are a single mother with multiple kids, you need to earn a certain wage to be able to cover those needs. And so you end up, you know, going towards income support, or, you know, what is that scaffolding to get you into those higher paid positions? Trade Horizons is one example that works, but we need more of that, and guaranteed basic income also allows for that. So I think in some ways your questions are kind of connected, and there's not a way. Now, I think bolstering existing programs, changing existing programs is very important, and, you know, guaranteed basic income isn't a fix-all for everything, but it's a great start for improving a lot of these systems that we see are broken. But I think right now you kind of have to be in one or the other, and they don't interact in a way that actually helps put the needs of that individual or that family at the forefront. And we do see a very dehumanizing process. The most difficult parts of my job are when I accompany somebody to an income support meeting. It is the most dehumanizing process I've ever seen. People have to beg to have dental work done beyond having teeth pulled. They need to beg to have you know, glasses changed when, you know, their prescription evolves, and it really doesn't provide the dignity that I think we want to be providing all islanders. And it also really, really impacts people's mental and physical health in really negative ways, which contributes to, you know, overall costs being higher in other parts of our systems.
Thank you.
Carla?
Thank you so much for being in here today. I think that some of the myths associated with guaranteed basic income, it's important that we bust them, and so what a great place to do it. I get really excited when we talk about this topic as I consider it along with the policies from ASI and thinking about the ripple impacts into the future. We may not see those impacts right away, but the money, if we were to look at this just from a cost savings perspective alone, I just think what a better future we have for everyone. And so I thank you for being here. I thank you for your hard work. I have two questions. The first one of the things that we hear and hear a lot is the defense of, I feel like we may be shifting a bit away from it, but I still hear it, is government saying, well, we have a targeted basic income as kind of a reason not to delve into the request of a universal basic income guarantee or guaranteed basic income. Can you speak a little bit to the differences of what the province offers right now as a targeted basic income versus what you're proposing?
So we'd be happy to leave you an explainer we've developed that explains why we ask for that to be changed in name from targeted basic income to something else. Because essentially, when I spoke about the values of basic income and the principles of a basic income guarantee, it's not a good fit with those principles and values. It's an important program, and it speaks to what Robin was discussing about continuing to make improvements to the social assistance program and programs that we have in the province to meet people's needs better. And so it's a good program. It's a good social assistance program. It is not a guaranteed basic income. And perhaps we'll just leave some information with you rather than take up the time explaining that. Is that cool with everyone? Okay. Yeah. Is that cool?
Yeah,
Carla?
yeah, that's great. Thank you. And that's what I was going to say. I don't think we should be calling that in the first place, but I didn't want to bias my question too much. The other question I have, I love what you said, Benoit. This is not a revolution, rather an evolution of the social net, which kind of leads me to the next thing that I hear, which kind of was along the lines of what Robin asked, is when I hear, well, people will take advantage, people might not work. And I've read the research, and I know that those are myths. And so I'm wondering if you can, framing it that way about it being an evolution to the social net, can you speak to what this could mean in terms of seeing, you know, maybe there is an individual who a guaranteed basic income, it's not enough, and they do need those other supports, hence the reason we need to keep those social supports going. How would that help us as a society figure out, like, how do we, that other supports people might need? How do you see this kind of I'm not asking this question properly. I hope you get what I'm getting at, but how would this potentially change the way we deliver other services? Does that make sense?
I think that's a good question from Benoit.
Yeah, Benoit, if you could talk about the technical aspects of that, that would be very helpful.
Okay. Well, I try in my other answer to explain that a bit, but I think the best example we have in the report is with persons with disabilities, where already in the income assistance and social assistance program, there's higher income support for those people, and there's also in-kind support, dental and other type of support. So that again, which is kind of, it's social assistance. There's a lot of check and balance, as discussed before, and this could probably be changed and improved. But those benefits, you don't want to keep them away or think that you could remove them because you have income support through a GBI that is more complete and really covered the 1864. So those benefits should remain in principle. These people get it because they have some special needs. And basically what a GBI gives you is basically a level of income that ensure you are not at least in deep poverty, to be sure, and you're not too far from the poverty line. And so with giving other income program that exists, if you have children, for example, you kind of approach really the poverty line. So, so that's the way I would think about these other in-kind support is a good example. And as I mentioned, the PEI already provide a lot of supports, income support, and a numbers of programs which income or rent support or these kind of things. And there, it's more a question of looking at those one by one. It's not, okay, you're going to be able to get rid of those, or it's not, we believe too that you may want to keep all of them the same way. So in some cases, you may decide for example, for if you have any program for a single mother, you may want to keep that, given the situation they are in. The poverty rate is pretty high, and the GBI doesn't seem to resolve all their problems in our simulation. And so it would be a case by case, but in many cases too, it may be possible to adjust, make the eligibility a bit more easier. Or you may not want to change eligibility and just reduce the benefit because the GBI cover these needs you were trying to cover with these other programs. So I think it will be a case by case. There could be some what people will call economist rationalization of some of these programs. Some will remain intact, and some in fact become a bit more generous in terms of accessibility. But overall, as the report says, we believe that the cost of all these programs in PEI would be probably reduced because of the presence of GBI. But it's really a work that will need to be done benefit by benefit for the province. I hope this helps you a bit about how to address these questions about other benefits and should other benefits remain in place. But that idea, what we're trying the report to say, to be realistic here, people who think that you could implement a GBI with the hope of getting rid of all the benefits that exist now to support different needs are just erring on the wrong side of the ledger.
And I would just add, that question around the evolution. It's 2024. I was born in 1985, which wasn't even 40 years ago, although it's very close to 40 years ago. And so much has changed in our society. We didn't have the internet, we didn't have computers, and now we have AI. We have automation in a lot of different ways. Just in the past couple of years with the global pandemic and Hurricane Fiona, our lives have radically changed. And public policy needs to catch up to that. And guaranteed basic income would have had an interaction with all of those emerging needs. And, you know, the days of, is climate change real? It's not up for debate anymore because we all see it in our own communities. And the way that automation and artificial intelligence is impacting the labor force is significant. And, you know, we see layoffs in the tech sector. 5-10 years ago, if you were a software engineer, a developer, those were guaranteed high income jobs. And now a team, instead of needing 100 people to do that work, you may need 10 overseeing the tools like ChatGPT. And so I think we really need to look at, even though I think a guaranteed basic income is something we've always needed, those needs and realities are becoming quite acute. And all of these emergent challenges that are going to continue to happen, unfortunately, and get more complicated, all relate to the need for guaranteed basic income.
I think we share your curiosity about what will change and what will transform under the influence of a basic income guarantee, which is exactly why to have a demonstration project beginning in Prince Edward Island and scalable to the rest of Canada.
Do you have another question, Carla?
Just a quick little
Okay, go ahead.
kind of wrap up. Thank you, Chair. I guess kind of how I see it happening and the evolution is that once people are on a guaranteed basic income, then we can target other assistance or supports that are needed. And I think that makes for everyone healthier. And then we don't have the blanket policies and the blanket things that are punitive by their very nature, whether intended or not. Anyway, thank you very much.
Peter?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to focus on the two main barriers that you described at the beginning of your presentation regarding why a guaranteed basic income has been such a challenge to create and establish, not just here in Canada, but in other places as well. And that is the cost and the political feasibility of it. I'm going to start with a question on the cost. And bless you, Benoit, for doing all of that necessary background work to actually come to the politicians with a fully fleshed, evidence-based, fully costed program, because that's what gets politicians' attention, is accurate costs for a program. And as you just said, Jane, we don't know what the benefits of such a program would be because we haven't, unfortunately, had a longitudinal study to do that, which is why we need it here. But the cost of this program, at least the proposed GBI from Coalition Canada, which started here on PEI, of course, $100 million. And that sounds like an enormous amount of money. And I think, Benoit, you mentioned that it's 1% of our provincial GDP here, and if we split the cost 50-50. At a federal level, that is such a tiny amount of money. Even at a provincial level, 1% does not sound, I mean, we sign off on special warrants here for $50 million last year for very questionable benefits. This would create a new program, a groundbreaking program, you said to be leaders in this field and perhaps globally. What would it take, because it strikes me that at a federal level, if the province were to say, you know what, we're going to pony up our 50%, I think the feds would just be there with this tiny amount of money. But I'm wondering whether, and I guess this is to Benoit principally, but to anybody who wants to talk about it, if our province truly wants to be the leader here, do you think that would make the tangible difference between this just being something we continue to talk about or something that becomes a real program?
I think I understand your question, Peter, but again, the cost is getting pretty low. So anyway, I'm not too sure what you're asking me about. If the PEI government would want to get into this, again, they asked to discuss with the federal government, and the two ministers are talking. So I think there's an interest clearly on PEI government, but I could be wrong about that. But the costs effectively, we estimate if you implement this program in PEI tomorrow morning or in a year, let's say more logically with some preparation, the cost is $100 million, we estimate, given the take-up rate you should expect and all the net out of other costs that basically the program would cost probably more in the zone of 190 million, but then you would save in other programs, and then the net and the take-up would be lower, and so you would get to the real cost would be $100 million. So as you said, 50-50. If you go to governments, for Fed, it's pretty low. PEI, it's pretty acceptable. I believe it's not very large cost to do a program of that type at the level of the benefit we're talking about. So to me, the real barrier of cost, which was pretty high, right? Because when you look at these programs and you follow the typical approach of nuclear family, the costs would be higher for PEI, but at the national level, for example, this would become the most important program in Canada. So we thought this was a pretty high cost and created a real barriers in terms of cost. Now we got at the level where, again, it's not super cheap, but it's really for what it provides, it's pretty low cost. PEI already spend 50 million per year on social assistance and or income assistance more generally. So this is just double compared to 6 times when we use the typical family. So pretty low. Again, to me, it's a no-brainer. Someone need to try this.
Follow that up with a PEI perspective, having taken part in the proposal?
Yeah, well, look, I think your question, it's a really important question that you're asking, Peter, because it's a question we have from the community. Why is Prince Edward Island not running with this project to Ottawa? Why is the government not running with this? It's something that would change. It's going to change the life of Prince Edward Island, and so when people can't anymore say, well, it's going to cost too much, because, as you say, Peter, the cost is in the proposal. It's not an exorbitant cost. So the people of Prince Edward Island really are developing a question for the legislature, and that is, why aren't you moving on this a little faster? And it's an honest question. You need to move on this. The work is done. It was handed to the province of Prince Edward Island, a gift that came from this group that was not. None of us had political ambitions. A gift was given to the province of Prince Edward Island in that proposal. And so, my challenge and our challenge is, go with it. Go with it. And I'm really hoping that this, when you report to the legislature, be strong and come out in the legislature and say, we are saying this is essential. Move.
Peter, do you have another question?
Yes, please. I really appreciate that powerful response, Marie. Thank you, and Benoit too, which brings me very neatly to the political feasibility of this. And I know you gave a history of basic income on PEI, but actually it goes back further than that, Marie, because the very first green motion ever to pass in this room was in 2016. I'm going to read the first operative clause of that. Therefore, be it resolved that the Legislative Assembly urge government to pursue a partnership with the federal government for the establishment of a universal basic income pilot project on Prince Edward Island. That was 2016. That passed unanimously in this House. It strikes me that we haven't moved an inch since then. And that really distresses me when I hear, and Gillian gave a really good description, I think, of the dialogue between Barbara Ramsey here as our minister and Minister Sudds at a federal level. But really, it's just on information sharing. It's on collecting data, and that's not what we need. We need money. We need to get this implemented. So there's clearly still an astonishingly strong and high and wide and deep barrier which is preventing this from becoming politically feasible. Because we've been talking about it and passing motions in this legislature for 9 years now, 8 years. It's sort of, I see Susan nodding her head in the background there because it echoes so much of what we were talking about in the previous presentation. I just want to take a moment to welcome Norma Dingwall, by the way, who's doing really amazing work to eliminate poverty in her Montague community. Nice to see you, Norma. So back to the political feasibility of this. We've created a special committee. They came back with a report which was extraordinarily well developed. It's been backed up by the work of Coalition Canada. Yes, this legislative committee, I suspect, will again come forward with strong recommendations, as you suggest, Marie. But until we have a government that has the courage and the will to do it, and for the minister to say, as she did in response to Minister Sudd's letter, it's a step forward, isn't it? It's just nice that we're communicating now. I find that pathetic after 9 years of talking with the federal government. That is not, if that's a step forward, it's a half inch. We need to get to the point where this provincial government takes the lead, isn't satisfied just to get information and data from the federal government, but comes forward and says, we're willing to put forward the $50 million. Will you join us in that and make that happen? And I really hope that this committee comes forward with that strong a recommendation. But again, we can't. All we can do is make recommendations. It's up to the executive branch. It's up to the government to actually do something. And I don't know if I have a question, Chair. I'm just venting my frustration at all of these years. Please, Jane.
I'll respond with an urge to continue that desire to develop a recommendation from the tool that is before us today is this committee, the standing committee. What you're able to do is make recommendations and act behind the scenes. We've gotten this far and received the gift of this proposal as a result of political agreement and of the unanimous all-party agreement that basic income guarantee is the right social policy direction for Prince Edward Island and is worth looking into. And so the challenge to you, and admitting the adversarial nature of political debate, the challenge to you is to create the political agreement in PEI and with the federal government to make this happen. So it is a matter of putting the money down on the table, and there is work to do to maintain and create political agreement about it. That's hard with adversarial tools. And at the same time, it's the challenge that we put to you as people who are here to make Prince Edward Island a better place and to make the situation of people who live here and of Canadians better. So.
And I would just add, I think it goes back to some of those first questions around, I always say, big is big. Basic income, it's big. It's a lot to wrap your head around. And I know that as elected officials, you all have a very difficult job and you're pulled in a lot of different directions. And it's really hard sometimes to use that, the limited time and resources that you have to know how to direct them. And, we talk about guaranteed basic income in a lot of different ways. I'm often asked, especially by media, if you could change one thing, what would it be? And I usually say, I don't fully accept the premise of your question because there's not really one thing that can fix everything. But if I had to choose one thing, it would be guaranteed basic income because it puts a floor underneath everyone that's a bit more stable and it allows all of the existing systems to function better because we have a healthier and more inclusive society. And so I won't comment on the political limitations that all of you are working within, But I really implore all of you as elected officials who are here to improve the status of islanders to really wrap your head around guaranteed basic income and this proposal, and speak to people on all levels of government about it, and speak to your constituents about it. All of you knocked on doors to get where you are today, and I'm sure all of you saw things behind those doors that alarmed you. And guaranteed basic income is the most effective way to eliminate poverty. And I know by talking to a lot of elected officials, a lot of you got into this work because you wanted to help. And public policy that's based on these principles of guaranteed basic income is one of the most effective ways that you can help your community and our island more broadly. I know all of you field calls from people who are in distress. They're in very difficult situations. And when you go to knock on doors again, if your government has been part of creating this legislation in PEI, you have something concrete to go back to all of those constituents with. And over time, they will see the benefits. It will transform lives. And so I know it can seem like it's a lot of bureaucratic details, and there's a lot of economists involved. Like, there was a lot of effort that went into developing this proposal. But at a very basic level, all of you are here to help your communities. And this is one of the most effective ways to help your communities. And we have done study and committee and research on how to eliminate poverty. Poverty is one thing. It's a lack of income. And so we can't eliminate poverty without providing people with money. And it seems like a really basic concept, but we'll often pay to have studies done, or we'll have consultants work on projects to try to figure out how to eliminate poverty. This is how you eliminate poverty, and you can't eliminate poverty without providing funding and benefits to people in your community.
Matt, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. It's hard to follow that. Well spoken. Thank you all for coming in, and I appreciate the opportunity as a new member to talk about this issue, because Jillian, you mentioned knocking on doors. I've knocked on doors in 2019, 2023, and 2024, and it's exciting and encouraging to be able to talk with people at the doors more knowledgeably about a basic income guarantee. So the work that you and the others are doing to spread the information is catching on. People are speaking intelligently about it, and I think it's a matter of when and not if. It's just when is the when, right? We're getting there. There's been lots of talk about the cost of the program, but I guess, and I'm sorry if I missed this, and it's likely in the report, but I guess the question I have is, we're not necessarily exploring or considering all of the benefits of the program, and those are much harder and intangible to define because they cross over, education, they cross into health, the economic stimulation, potential savings on the justice system, the increased tax revenue due to increased spending power. How do we help promote that side of it tangibly so that we're not hung up on what's suggested to be a hefty price tag? How do we move away from that to the bigger discussion? And again, with Susan and Patsy's previous presentation on the global benefits, like there are so many global benefits. Is it possible to hire an economist to say, here's the cost, but here's the big benefit?
Right. Benoit, do you want to address that first?
Yes, I could. Thanks, Jane. So, well, you could try to hire an economist to do that, but to be clear, effectively, in the gross cost, which is presented in the report, which is 188 million, this is a gross cost, so doesn't account for any benefits and doesn't account. You mentioned one is higher provincial sales tax that people would pay on what they buy to get more income. For example, it's one example. This one is covered. We try to cover it into the net cost. So when we talk about the net cost, it kind of net out these things that would come back in the fisc coffer. So the net cost is 100 million, we believe, is an estimate with some range around that, but 100 million. In terms of the health, justice systems, education, all these other benefits, not covered. Again, as I mentioned, the report is pretty clear about, the impact this would have on children that are now living in poverty, that would no longer live in poverty. In terms of the next generation, the evidence is pretty clear that they would kind of bring, this would bring benefits to them in terms of their well-being, but also in terms of their government revenues. So that's pretty clear, but it's next generation. What happened in between on the health system, education, all that, it's more fuzzy. Like I would say the big one, the one you mentioned, health, I think evidence in the literature is pretty clear about the interaction between socioeconomic indicators and health, and within socioeconomic indicators also a huge correlation with income. So when you look at income, health, a huge correlation. We know that in most provinces, a lot of the spending is done on the lower income people disproportionately. And so this is true in every province. This is true in Canada overall. So then the question is, so to me, the problem, the report doesn't go further into that because we'll look at the evidence and there's no real super clear, solid evidence about the link from income to health. So probably you have to think about bidirectional impact for a given, which is not a problem. The problem is trying to figure out the impact from income to health. What is the impact? What are the other factors that account for the impact and that would change the impact, and how long it take to get the impact, and what will be the quantum? This is a high price target to figure out this answer. There's not much in literature that really go after that. And so I would say that most economists in the group, I would say all of them, agree that there's very likely to be an impact. We're quite unsure about how long it would take and what will be the impact. So there is clearly a savings on the outside and a benefit, but it's pretty hard to pinpoint what is it exactly. And I wish you good luck if you hire an economist to find solid evidence for that.
Thank you for that. And my only other question is just seeing the change year over year and more momentum behind a program such as this. I guess for me, when I really opened my eyes to it was in the last election campaign, 2023, the PEI Medical Society came out with a written statement in favor of it, and that sort of really piqued my interest because that was getting to the thinking of what we just discussed here with Benoit, was the non-tangible corollary benefits that are harder for economists to put the benefits on. But I guess my question is, how do you gauge where we're at now for your advocacy efforts to continue to be able to promote and advocate? How are you going to the different groups like the PEI Medical Society, encouraging more public statements, polling, for example? What can be done to sort of keep this train moving?
Well, what we would really like to see is a statement from the government of Prince Edward Island that we're on this and we're moving. And I know it has been handed to the minister, and that's at the appropriate place. But I just really feel we're at a point right now that if Prince Edward Island doesn't move on this, I think we're going to lose it. it's in our hands, it's in our hands, I mean, it's in the hands of the government, but it's also in the hands of the community. And there's just something happening in Ottawa that makes us all a little nervous. And we don't need another federal election before this gets into place. So there's an urgency about that, and I want to, like, it's kind of bold to make that comment, I think, in this circle. But I'm just saying that what we need now is not just, well, an analysis of this cost and that cost and so on. That's been done. It's there in our hands, and the move towards Ottawa has to be made, and it has to be made soon. And not just depend on like a conversation back and forth. And I can see getting a working group being really important, because what has to be worked out as well is how is the province and the federal government going to work together on this? That's a question that needs to be worked out in a working group with some really strong bureaucratic people there who know the ins and outs of that. That's something that needs to be done. But the intent must be stronger than it is now. The intent must be that we are moving on this, and we really need to, as citizens, I want to hear that this government is moving on this. And like, I'm looking over in this direction for a reason, because like in a sense, it's, you know, you have to take some motion on this, and so it's a challenge that I'm just putting out there today, that I don't think we have a lot of time. I don't think we can be dawdling with this, because we're in a very politically dangerous moment for people, not just for governments, but for people.
And I think at a community level, it has been hard to do that broad outreach that we would like to do on an ongoing basis with islanders across the province. The COVID-19 changed all of our lives, but the way it really impacted community groups in particular, the risks associated with having a large community forum where you have everyone moving around and talking to each other and learning more about basic income and providing us with feedback and us providing information. You know, we're getting back to that, but it's been very difficult, and all of that type of community engagement comes with more risks these days. We also see, as community groups, we really were on the front lines of delivering a lot of support to people, either during the pandemic, during the inflation crisis, after Fiona. And so it has been difficult. You know, it's great to hear that there is that momentum at the doors. But I think we feel like we would like to be able to do more in tandem with what government is doing at the political level as well. And there is some work happening. It's an ongoing basis. We're also looking right now with the National Action Plan on Gender-Based Violence. How would a program like Guaranteed Basic Income interact with people who are experiencing gender-based violence, domestic violence in particular? And so we're hoping to continue that community engagement, but it has been a challenge the past couple of years. And the Working Group for a Livable Income you know, is hosted by the Cooper Institute. There's a number of organizations represented as well as individuals, but we're all stretched very thin, and we have very limited resources, and our ability to do that broad stakeholder engagement like we would like to, I think has been a particular challenge the past couple of years.
Robin? Gord?
Yeah, thanks for coming in and talking about this. I was on the working group for over a year, or the committee, sorry. I was on the committee that explored this, and it was the meetings and the discussion, and just thinking back to that, it's almost like I have to put on another cap to think back. It was that long ago. The recommendations were clear. Additional studies have come out. When I first got involved in that, I wasn't sure myself. And then I got to see that, yes, this has been looked at, costed, and it's going to be, it would be expensive. but we have an opportunity in Prince Edward Island to be the first. We did talk about it back then as a pilot. Now it's demonstration. I don't have enough time to ask questions. So that's just a small thing. But it is an opportunity to do something special in Prince Edward Island. And I was disappointed with the minister's letter in the legislature where it said we were looking at just further setting up a working group. And I'm further disappointed today to find out that the working group's not set up as of right now. I just don't understand what's taking so long. What information have you had as a group? Has anybody reached out to you about sitting on that working group? And can you just elaborate on anything that's come about with that letter?
Marie, you were in that meeting?
Yeah. Well, no, all that what I know is what you know. And that is that the conversation has taken place and that there is a response from the federal level that yes, we are willing to do, to set up a dialogue process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, what the content of that is, it's not really clear.
No.
But it is a step.
Yeah.
It is installed. So I think we have to keep pushing on that to make sure that like they can't go on for months and months and talk about how they're going to relate the province to the federal government. That can't go on for months, but at least we need to push to make sure that that gets set up and that there is serious conversation happening about implementation. We're not talking just about another study or discussion. We're talking about, will this working group that's established begin to see itself as part of the implementation process?
Gord, do you have another
And
question?
my last question too is, you talk about the taxation system in this government. We're waiting on a caregiver's benefit that's been delayed and delayed and delayed and talked about, and not just as a simple tax change. And we've talked about issues there. So I'm getting worried at this point that we're not close enough to getting this going with a federal election coming, like you said, and that was one of my questions before. We've got to find the will to get there, and I think we've got to do it fairly quickly. But a specific question about this, when we were looking at this as a committee, we talked about the benefits starting at 18 or 25. Since then, the provincial government has looked at extending further supports to the age of 25 from 18. Is there much research on the number between 25 and 18 would be my kind of question in that mix?
I think that's probably a question about the family structure, Benoit, that's been used for the costing model in this, and that's such an innovation in the proposal, using census families. Would you like to?
I'm not sure I got the question right at the end.
Well,
Could you repeat the end question?
thinking about the what supports, how this adjusts or affects supports for ages 18 to 25 in particular. And I think that the proposal that's in front of us has specific import for people in that age bracket because of the,
So what I could say about that, well, the group we look at in the report is 18 to 29, so it's not 18 to 25. This is the way we define the youth. And in the simulation, they receive a lot of the benefits, even with the census family, the one we present all of our results, they receive 40% of all the benefits. So that group is, as we mentioned in the report, need to be looked at a bit more carefully. We think that for the age group, as we mentioned in the report, income is fine, but it needs to come with other support for those who get probably the maximum benefit, for example, like support to better introduce labor market and things like that, see what are their needs exactly. So it should be a GBI plus for those age. And at the same time, we mentioned too, and I would just stop there, but in the simulation, we have the students are a big part of those receiving benefits. About half of those 40% are received by students. So there's an interaction with the student financial assistance program that need to be figured out by civil servants. They need to figure out how you want to merge these two programs. Right now, we were not able to do that because the model we use, because it's based on the tax data, doesn't include loans and grants that students are receiving. So you need to think about that. So when we gave them a GBI, it's based on their income, excluding loans and grants. Clearly, they don't need all the support we're giving them in the simulation, which is part of why we think the net cost would be quite lower, because they may need some supplementary support if they, if you know the program of the financial assistance for students. It's a simple but complicated model based about what income you have and what are your needs. And they try to close that gap, but they often don't close it totally. So you may want to use that GBI to close that gap totally. But right now, we are just not modeling that correctly because we don't have the loans and grants. So that need to be looked at. So I would say in all the age group we cover there, the youth is the one where we think more work, technical work need to be done by civil servants in between PEI and the Fed that would have access to data on that program.
Gord, do you have another question?
I'm good, thank you.
Tyler?
Pardon me. Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank everybody for being here today, and it's humbling to see the passion that is in some of you. Jillian, I think that your passion, you could probably sell ice to Eskimos. You have a lot of passion when you speak about it. And I don't really have a question. I just have a bunch of comments. I've been making notes and whatnot. And I know when this topic gets to the media, I often get conflicting views from constituents when I meet them in passing, and some have emailed that are in support, some that have emailed that are not in support and whatnot. And, pardon me, and Carla touched on a subject earlier, and about Benoit's revolution, not evolution, or evolution, not resolution. Sorry. And I often think of our employment insurance and how it evolved. Like, it used to be no one wanted to work when they were on it because you were penalized, and how it evolved over time, and people are doing things, and I could see a lot of that with this project. And one of the other things that I jumped on my phone and sent out a couple messages while it was going on, because I had a contact of mine send me a message a week ago about Senator Kim Pate was in the town of Kensington and spoke on livable income, and he was a counselor in Kensington, and he sent me messages. He's like, "Oh my God, this was so great! Like, you guys got to jump on board with this." And I think that one of the big things around the whole file is communication. Like, we really got to communicate that much more, because like a lot of these people that will send emails that are against it, once you start explaining it and telling the whole story behind it, like, oh yeah, this makes a little more sense. So I really think that we have to do a better job of communicating this. And there were a lot of comments on the minister, Barb Ramsey, in the House and what she did. And I will, for one, say that she was a new minister who got in and jumped right into the file. And around our caucus table, there is no doubt that she is in support. And you have a lot of support, like with MLA Sidney McEwen. He's the first to boast up and want to argue about this because he is so passionate about the file as well. And I just in closing, I just want to say that where you may think there's not a voice, there is. Like the minister, I think she said she's going to continue to advocate with the federal government for this, and I know she is.
Okay, I've exhausted my
And
list.
I'd just like to say, and she needs support from her colleagues, strong support.
So I've exhausted my list, but I just have one question. I think I've heard from you mentioned that there hasn't really been a real true program put anywhere else in Canada. Is that correct? Like there's might have been
Not for 5 to 7 years. So the most recent experiment was with 3 communities in Ontario that had a pilot that had been promised to continue that was canceled with a change of government despite promises.
So my question is, why PEI? Why us?
There's so many reasons. First of all, thanks to the tremendous work that people in the community, reaching the grassroots, reaching out to the Working Group for a Livable Income, reaching from the Working Group for a Livable Income, there's a great deal of knowledge, and we've been able to tap into the community wisdom about what people need and what solutions they see as really viable. We were shocked when we began this work more than 10 years ago, the depth of knowledge in the community that already existed, and the strength of desire for a basic income guarantee. And that led to communications, as you've just said, with and among political folks, civil society, like the medical society, so that we've created a community and culture where there is some general knowledge and understanding of basic income guarantee. We have organizations like Women's Network and Cooper Institute and our own organization that have put basic income guarantee as our first policy recommendation, our first policy ask. So those things have all been there. The circumstances of all parties expressing curiosity and desire to know more about basic income led to the gift of this proposal. And the proposal makes the case very clearly that a province-wide program that resolves those kinds of technical challenges that might come up by bringing the federal and provincial civil services together to talk through any challenges that exist would make a program starting in PEI uniquely scalable to all of Canada, because those provincial, federal things could be sorted out. This is somewhere where we could do it at a province-wide scale, but I know that Marie has impassioned words as well, and Jill as well, so I don't want to take up all the impassioned words.
Well, my first response was, why PEI? Marie Burge is a big part of that, and has worked tirelessly around this issue for a long time. But I think just to add on to what Jane has said, if the federal government were to partner with a municipality with a similar population size, they wouldn't get that interplay between what is provincial jurisdiction. And so we are uniquely placed in PEI, where you could have it in a smaller jurisdiction, that interaction with the federal government, but you would have a better sense of how the impacts on all of those provincial jurisdiction programs are, and that's an opportunity that, if it can work here, it can be exported to other parts of the country, just like Medicare was originally, started in Saskatchewan and then brought to the rest of Canada. And, I think it's worth naming that there was a lot of people who didn't support a public health care system at that time either, but as that policy got put in place, sure, there's a lot of challenges within our healthcare system and the delivery of services today, but there's still a lot of support and valuing of that public healthcare system. And so I do think that's really important, but I do think there's been a lot of grassroots work that's been done by people like Marie for decades in PEI, an all-party legislative motion in support of basic income guarantee, and then that uniqueness of our smaller size, but that provincial jurisdiction makes PEI a really great place. I've heard from a lot of people who work at the federal level, often if something works in PEI, it can be scaled to other jurisdictions. And so it is a great place to start things and bring it to the rest of the country.
Should we let Benoit get a word and let you have the last word, Marie? Benoit, why PEI from a perspective of other places in Canada?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Well, you guys made it very clear, some arguments, but again, I think there's consensus among economists that we can learn much from a pilot anymore. And this is not a pilot because it will be province-wide. And so It's at a scale where you have a province, it's a small province, it make it manageable, but at a scale where you will learn a lot effectively about how it would impact in other provinces. And you don't have all these issues like you have with pilot projects where you need a saturation site that is well selected and you need to have a random sample. This is like in Ontario was very difficult. And so it means that PEI is very well placed to do this. It would be my pick number one on a technical basis for the country.
Yeah, I have two things I'd like to say before we finish. One of them is that I never thought that I would belong to a group like Coalition Canada, where Prince Edward Island is there right in the center of that organization. The organization was formed around Prince Edward Island. And when I go to a meeting and I hear somebody from Saskatchewan saying, yeah, let's go for it, PEI, like I'm just there. I haven't heard that before. I haven't heard that kind of sentiment ever, that something wonderful could happen in PEI that's good for all of Canada. That's how people see it. And I think it's really important for us to appreciate that. And so just sitting down with a group of Canadians from all the provinces and the territories, and you're sitting with people who are saying, go for it, PEI, go for it, and you can do it. The second thing I want to talk about just before we leave is this is not a pilot, it is a demonstration. And when you demonstrate something, it means you want to show that it works. And so the important part of this demonstration is that we've said right from the beginning, 5 to 7 years. I prefer 7 years because it gets us through 3 electoral cycles. You know why, right? So, but the point is that from day one, it will be evaluated, it must be evaluated with a highly technical, academic evaluation process. Starting day one, not at the end of 5 months, day one, that starts. And the goal of many evaluations is, let's see how it worked, and then we'll make decisions. That's not what this kind of evaluation will do. This will correct mistakes day by day by day. Correct the mistakes. And what we should end up with in 5 to 7 years is the most perfect program that we could possibly make, because we're going to be corrected as we go. That's what the evaluation will be. So I think we should remember that when we use the word demonstration. I use it very, very intentionally. It is a demonstrating. We're demonstrating something, and we're demonstrating to ourselves, but we're demonstrating to the rest of the country.
A demonstration of basic income guarantee is going to happen somewhere in Canada. I am very, very confident that that is the next social policy direction for the future of Canada, and it can be here. We think it should be here, and we hope that you agree and that we can be part of together making it start here.
Jillian, do you have anything to say in closing?
Surprisingly, no. I think I've said it all.
Well, on behalf of our committee and behalf of myself as the chair, thank you for coming and enlightening us and educating us on this very important topic. So with that, I don't think there's anybody else that had anything to say. I will call this meeting for a break.
Thank you.